How do avoidant exes feel when you block them after they walked away? Thank you, the Batgoz, for commenting this question. Many of you guys have been asking this question. I hope this video helps. When someone with an avoidant attachment walks away, they do it with a quiet certainty, like a ship leaving the harbor, expecting the shore to always be there. They tell themselves they need space, that detachment is their safety, that feelings are burdens they'd rather not carry. But here's the secret. They don't expect you to truly disappear. They assume you'll wait, that you'll leave the door open just wide enough for them to return on their terms. So when you block them, you don't just close the door, you bolt it shut. And that shakes them more than they'd ever admit. You see, avoidance isn't about not caring. It's about fearing closeness. They keep one foot out the door, not because they don't feel, but because feeling too much terrifies them. The idea of losing control, of being vulnerable, is their deepest fear. And when you block them, you force them to face something they never prepared for. The possibility that they miscalculated your patience, that you won't always be there. As Winston Churchill once said, you will never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. Blocking an avoidant ex isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your energy. It's about refusing to be someone's emotional waiting room while they figure out their fears. And trust me, the moment they realize they no longer have access to you, their mind starts racing. At first, they convince themselves they don't care. It's better this way, they think. I needed space, and they're just proving my point. But then, something shifts. They go to check your profile out of habit only to find nothing. No updates, no posts, no silent breadcrumb trail to follow. The predictability of your presence, the safety net they relied on, it's gone. And suddenly, they're no longer in control of the distance. You are. Steve Jobs once said, "Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith." For an avoidant ex, blocking them is that brick. It forces them to confront their own behavior. Some will double down, convincing themselves it's just a phase. Others? They'll start feeling that uneasy tug in their chest, the one they avoid at all costs. And here's the real kicker. Avoidants don't deal well with rejection. They dish it out, but they don't like it served back. When you walk away first, when you become truly unavailable, they don't just feel blocked online. They feel blocked from the comfort of knowing you're still an option. That's when they start to wonder, did I misjudge this? Were they stronger than I thought? Now, does that mean they'll come running back? Not always. But what it does mean is that for the first time, they're forced to sit with the discomfort they tried to escape. No distractions, no backup plan. You've cut the cord. And in that silence, they finally hear what they've been avoiding all along. Their own feelings. So if you've ever wondered whether blocking your avoidant ex makes a difference, stick with me. What I'm about to share next will open your eyes to the psychology behind their reaction, and, more importantly, how you can move forward with power and clarity. If you are ready to become the best version of yourself, type this mantra in the comments. Write it down. I choose to protect my peace. When they walked away, they made their choice. Blocking them is a step toward healing. I release the past and embrace my strength. I am worthy of love that nurtures and fulfills. I honor my boundaries and trust my journey. Ace Wisdom presents How do avoidant exes feel when you block them after they walked away? Avoidant exes are used to being the ones who control the emotional distance in a relationship. They pull away when things get too intense, expecting you to wait, reach out, or even chase them. It's a cycle they've mastered, one where they create space, and you're the one left wondering when or if they'll return. But when you block them, you disrupt that pattern completely. Suddenly, they're not the ones choosing the distance. You are. And that throws them off balance in a way they didn't anticipate. As Robert Greene, author of The 48 Laws of Power, puts it, "The person who cannot control their emotions controls nothing." Blocking isn't about anger or pettiness, it's about reclaiming control over your own emotional state. You're no longer playing by their unspoken rules. You're stepping off the emotional roller coaster and refusing to be part of their push-pull dynamic. At first, they may act indifferent, telling themselves, "Good. This is what I wanted." But deep down, the realization creeps in. They didn't expect to lose access to you completely. The power they once had, knowing you were always within reach, is gone. And that changes everything. A key point. Number 2. They experience an identity disruption. Avoidants thrive on emotional distance, not just as a defense mechanism, but as a way to maintain control over how they see themselves. They tell themselves a story. "I don't need anyone. I'm fine on my own. They'll always be there if I ever change my mind." But when you block them, that narrative cracks. Suddenly, they're not the one doing the leaving. You are. And that forces them to confront something deeply uncomfortable. They're not as in control as they thought. Their usual pattern, creating space and expecting you to still be emotionally available, is shattered. Key point number 3. The illusion of control starts to crumble. Avoidants rely on the belief that they can come and go as they please. It's not always conscious, but it's part of their emotional wiring. They assume that if they ever decide to return, you'll still be there, waiting, open, and accessible. This illusion of control is what makes them feel safe in relationships without fully committing. But blocking them, that's like flipping the table on their carefully arranged game pieces. Suddenly, they don't have control. They don't get to decide if and when they reconnect. And that's a reality they weren't prepared to face. Key point number 4. Curiosity and doubt begin to eat at them. At first, your avoidant ex might act completely unbothered by being blocked. They'll tell themselves, "Good, this just proves why I needed to leave." They may even convince themselves that you're acting out of emotion and that it'll pass. But then something happens. They go to check up on you, and they can't. No profile, no posts, no updates. You've disappeared from their world. And that's when curiosity starts to creep in. Key point number 5. They start to feel rejected, and avoidants hate that. Avoidants are used to being the ones who create distance. They like to feel in control of when and how they detach. But when you block them, the tables turn. They're no longer the one choosing distance. They're on the receiving end of it. And here's the thing. Avoidants may fear intimacy, but they hate feeling rejected. They spend so much time avoiding deep emotional bonds because they don't want to be hurt. Yet, when you block them, they experience a kind of rejection they weren't expecting. As Sigmund Freud once said, "We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love." Avoidants pretend they don't need connection, but deep down, they still crave it, just on their own terms. When you block them, it sends a message they weren't ready for. They don't get to decide when you're available to them anymore. At first, they might downplay it. Whatever, I didn't want to talk to them anyway. But then, over time, the realization settles in. They didn't just lose you temporarily. They might have lost you for good. And that's a feeling they weren't prepared to handle. Because for the first time, they're the one feeling abandoned. Key point number 6. They start to regret walking away. Avoidants convince themselves that leaving was the right choice. They tell themselves that distance is what they needed, that emotions were overwhelming, and that detaching was the best way to protect themselves. But when you block them, something shifts. They no longer have the option to come back, even if they wanted to. And that's when regret starts creeping in. Suddenly, they start questioning their own decision. Did I act too impulsively? Did I underestimate their value in my life? Was I wrong to think they'd always be there? As Paulo Coelho once said, one day you will wake up and there won't be any more time to do the things you've always wanted. Do it now. Avoidants operate under the illusion that they have all the time in the world to return when they're ready. But blocking them forces them to realize that time isn't unlimited. Sometimes people actually move on. At first, they'll resist the feeling of regret, telling themselves, it's better this way. But as time passes, doubt lingers. They might even try reaching out through mutual friends, fake accounts or other indirect ways, because now, for the first time, they're the ones feeling the loss. And nothing messes with an avoidant's mind more than realizing they walked away from something and might never get it back. Key point number 7. They feel uncertain about their own feelings. Avoidants like to keep things emotionally neat, at least on the surface. They convince themselves they don't need deep attachment, that walking away was logical, and that emotions are just messy complications. But when you block them, their carefully built emotional walls start to crack. Suddenly they're left with thoughts they weren't prepared for. If I really didn't care, why does this bother me? Why do I keep checking if they unblocked me? Do I actually miss them, or do I just miss the comfort of knowing they were there? As Socrates once said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Avoidants spend so much time avoiding their own emotions that they rarely stop to truly examine them. But when they lose access to you, they're forced to sit with feelings they can no longer suppress with distance. At first, they'll try to brush it off. This is just my ego talking. But the longer they remain blocked, the more they start questioning their own emotional detachment. And that's when something unexpected happens. They start wondering if they actually had stronger feelings than they ever allowed themselves to admit. So, what does an avoidant ex really feel when you block them? Confused, unsettled, and whether they admit it or not, affected. They may have walked away thinking they were in control, but when you cut off their access, the illusion shatters. Suddenly, they're the ones left wondering, questioning, and feeling the sting of rejection. But here's the most important takeaway. This isn't about them. It's about you. Blocking isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your peace. It's about recognizing that you don't have to sit around waiting for someone who keeps you at arm's length. As Maya Angelou wisely said, never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever blocked an avoidant ex? Did they react? or did they stay silent? Drop your experience in the comments below and let's talk about it. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Ace Wisdom community for more deep dives into relationships and self-empowerment. Because at the end of the day, your power isn't in waiting, it's in knowing when to walk away for good.